Hi again, everybody. We welcome you into the latest edition of Gun on One here on the Inside the Birds Network. I'm Derrick Gunn. And, it's amazing. We all go through different things in our lives to get to a certain point in our lives. Some of us have easy roads, and others, well, not so easy. My guest on this particular Gun on One is a man I've known since he was a rookie in the NFL, and I call a dear friend, former Eagle wide receiver, Jason Avant. Jason, how you doing, man? It's been a while.
I'm doing good, Gun. Good to see you, buddy. Everything is well with me and my family. I got no complaints. Ready for the season, football season around. You can smell it in the air, college, NFL. Great time of the year. The energy changes, and that's what you love about this time of year. The energy
Yeah,
changes with people. Everyone's excited this time of year. Maybe a month from now, they'll realize their team sucks. But after that, but you got to take advantage of this month or so.
the reason I asked you to be on this particular podcast because I think your story is so tremendous and so inspiring. And we're going to go back to when you were a kid, and the trials and the tribulations you had to go through early on in your life. And, we know you grew up on the south side of Chicago, which is not an easy place to grow up. And the compounding issue, would you say that instability, borderline nightmare is the best way to describe the way you had to grow up as a kid?
You know what? When you're in it, you view it that way. Hindsight is always 2020. And with everything that I've gone through, I've learned over the years to appreciate it, right? So I'll give you guys like a recap of what Gunner is talking about. Like he said, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My mom dropped me off with my grandmother, my dad's mother, when I was a baby. My dad was former military, Marine, was in the small conflict with the War of Grenada. And he was on the second wave. Second wave was basically dead body cleanup for him. And when he got back to the States, he met my mom and they entered into a relationship. My dad, with all the things that he was dealing with PTSD, they didn't have that term then, turned to crack cocaine and turned to drugs. And my mom too. And they weren't fit as parents to be able to raise me at that time. So they gave me to my grandmother. Now, my grandmother is a good woman, just lived in a terrible neighborhood. And, we had a lot of people in and out of the house because my grandmother wanted everyone to have a safe place to stay, also eat. She's from Mississippi. That was just her thing.
Yep.
So my grandmother was raising a bunch of different types of family, up to 10 to 14 people in this house.
Wow.
And I was my grandmother's like favorite out of everyone. But my grandmother would take me to church, but the other side of my house was selling drugs and then the Gangster Disciples gang. So before you know it, fifth, sixth grade, I'm selling drugs. I'm out on the corners. I'm holding guns. I'm, making drops for people, doing all types of stuff. And the way that I was able to overcome that, every night, my grandmother would lay her hands on me. Lord, do something in Jason's life. Give him a gift. Give him a talent. Let him overcome this situation. And she would pray over me every single night. I would go to sleep with her praying over me. She would be down on her knees. I would be in the bed. She would have her hand on me, praying over me. And even though I was acquiescing or giving into my environment, I realized then that I thought differently. Because there's only a certain amount of, ego and strength you think you have, so much of that you think you have when you go into a block. You know that they're going to shoot at around 10, 30, 11 every day. And you stay out there because you got to make this money, right? So me, I didn't have that type of stuff in me. Before you know it, I'd be getting to duck out of there, do different things. It just wasn't in me to be that way. And it was because of what my grandmother would instill in me. She would teach me scriptures. Jay, you can't do it. Go out and do this. All these types of things. And because our house was a drug house, we got raided twice in the state of Illinois. On the third time, they're able to take your home from you. My grandmother panicked and sold the home, and we all got scattered over Chicago, different parts of Chicago. I ended up with my grandmother and my aunt in this new neighborhood. These kids were in the basketball. You know, back in the day, there was no football in Chicago. It was all about Michael Jordan. So I was so intrigued by it. I began to play with, different guys and take interest in it. And I just loved the game of basketball. I get to high school, my basketball coach says to me, "Hey, Jason, you can't play basketball unless you play football."
Oh my goodness.
So that's how I got introduced to the game. I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
A basketball player through and through. I was rated really high in the state and also in the country as a basketball player because Chicago is like a breeding ground. Once you start playing, they have so many trainers and they dudes in the neighborhood. They'll teach you how to play. It's so much competition. People are so good in order to compete. If you have that in you, you'll get good really quickly. And but my basketball coach happened to be the basketball coach and the football coach, and he needed football players. He is tired of having 500 people for basketball tryouts, and whoever showed up to the football team made it. So that's what he did. So he puts me out there as a sophomore. I don't know, maybe 165, 170 pounds. We only had one team. There was no JV. It was just varsity. No freshman team, right? So we school, not much money, back in the Ogdale Garden projects in Southside Chicago. He puts me at middle linebacker gun. ISO drill, me and the fullback. I had to button press. The first time I ever heard those dreaded words of my life, right? Runs the fullback at me. Fullback is all a senior, so he's way bigger than I am. And I have to run into this dude, button press, and try to peel off and make the tackle. This dude body slams me 10 straight times. I quit, said your mama, and left the field. I was like, this is stupid. So I go home. My grandmother, saving grace. My grandmother gets me and is like, "Hey, you can't quit." I'm like, "Nah, that's just stupid. That's just idiotic. Just running to people. It doesn't make sense, right?" So I'm like giving her the third degree. My dad calls me every day around the same time from prison. And my grandmother lets my dad know. My dad talks me into going back out there along with my grandmother. Little did I know the coach had already called my grandmother in order to talk me to go back out, right? And so my grandmother, my coach, and my dad called him from prison like, "Hey, Jason, got to go back out there." I'm like, "Ah, here we go." So I go back out there. He changes my position, put me at running back and cornerback. Gun, I was so afraid of getting hit. It was only 3 options: touchdown, out of bounds, or get down. I think I scored like 15 touchdowns my first year. My first year, and I didn't get the ball much at all. I was like the backup running back, but I wasn't about to get hit. It just wasn't happening. Right? So and I played cornerback, and he was like, "Hey, it's just like basketball. Stay close to the guy. The ball comes, you knock it down, and you intercept it. Whenever they throw it to me, I'll intercept it." It's like, we may have something with this kid. This whole time, Gunner.
Yeah.
This is a prerequisite to me. I don't like the sport. I'm being made to do this. I didn't want to do this. I just want to play basketball. It's not something that I love or that I enjoy at all. But here's where it changed. My junior year, same way, going out there. I play a season. I'm starting to get letters from everywhere in the country. That following summer, I go to University of Michigan's camp on a wing and a prayer. So I'm starting to get letters. My junior year ends. Michigan's telling me to come to camp. I don't have a way to get to University of Michigan's camp. We don't have money to be able to stay in the hotel and/or drive up to University of Michigan. The gas money, tolls, all that stuff. We don't have it. I go to a local camp, Revisori, and that's a name for you back in the day from the Bears.
Wow.
Riri Sawyer, and Otis Wilson. They had a camp up north. I was able to get to that camp because some of the local coaches were taking kids up there. So I was able to hitch a ride up to that camp.
Yeah.
I'm in a camp going back and forth for 2 days. It was just, I think, a 2 or 3 day camp. I had a quarterback named Mike Duda from New Trier High School. New Trier High School is in Winnetka, Illinois, one of the highest, median household incomes in the country, like very, very affluent area. Mm-hmm. This kid is throwing dimes from New Trier, left-hand dude throwing dimes. And I'm like, this is how easy it is when you have a quarterback? Me and this dude are lighting up this camp. I'm talking about every game we had like 5 or 6 touchdowns, just me and him. And the coach had to tell him to stop throwing the ball to me. The opposing coach is like, hey, you got to stop throwing the ball. We need a chance, right? Stop throwing you two. Y'all can't throw the ball. So we went like MVP of this camp. Me and this dude like hit it off, right? As far as just, chemistry, find out about his family. His mom takes notice of it. And he's like, dude, you got to be able to go to Michigan's camp because that's where I'm going. We go to camp, both of us getting offered right away. I need you at the camp, right? And I'm like, dude, I can't go. So his mom calls my grandmother, her house phone, sets it all up. They come and get me to the University of Michigan's camp for 2 days. She pays for my hotel, pays for my food, pays for all my accommodations in order to get to University of Michigan's camp. I get to University of Michigan's camp. I'm like, dude, I'm here. There's no way that any of these receivers, now that's all the top receivers in the country there.
Yeah.
So my goal was to, because I played DB as well. I played corner and safety. And I was like a potential All-American for both of them. Mm-hmm. Right. So I said, I'm going to get a receiver scholarship in these 2 days. I got it in the first day of being at the camp. And then I was like, I'm going to make every other receiver in this camp look terrible. And I was able to accomplish that goal. I D'd up everybody and I got open on everybody. Wow. So I ended up getting a scholarship offer in that first day. And my friend didn't get a scholarship offer on the way back home. He was sleeping in the back. And me and his mom were talking, and because I didn't want to mention it to him, she was like, hey, did you get a scholarship offer? I said, I did. And she's like, Mike didn't get it. But if anything else, I know that God intervened in this situation for this time and this moment for you. And man, my life and all the things that had to go right, Gunner, for me to make to the NFL was nothing but God's grace and mercy. And I didn't mention all of this stuff in the story, but my house has been shot up 4, 5, 6 times. It's a lot. I try not to even remember, but I've literally pulled family members off the front porch that have been shot up multiple times. We've had to, perform CPR on cousins and family members. My grandmother.
You were performing CPR?
Oh, trying to get them, resuscitate our family. Yeah.
And how old were you at that time?
I didn't know what I was doing. I saw what I saw on TV.
How old were you at that point?
6th, 7th grade.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, these are things that you don't want to have to go through, but you go through them. My best friend as a kid, a guy named Kinrod, and another guy named Antoine. Antoine shot in the back of the head from a gang member. Bam, point blank. My best friend Kinrod ended up getting a life sentence when he turned 18. Just the type of things that you go through and the things. I'm not proud of that, those moments, because I don't want anybody to hear and be like, oh, I can continue down this path and I can make it. Yes, you can, but just know that getting around, changing the environment, us moving and having an opportunity to see different things, that's what's made me successful. That's my grandmother's prayers, and I say all of that. I ended up going to the University of Michigan, and I'm like, man, I'm from Chicago. I'm at the University of Michigan. I'm about to have a good time. The first day I get there, I get room with the pastor's son.
A pastor's son.
My roommate that I selected, one of the DBs from camp, he backed out like the day before, ended up going to Michigan State. There's only one roommate left at this point, and it's the pastor's son. We get out of camp, the pastor's in there waiting on me. Like, when is he getting here? He waiting on me. Oil in his hands, smacking on my head. Father, in Jesus' name, bless this young man. Let him have a talent, a gift. Let him get out of the situation. Let him use it for your good. I'm like, man, I can't do nothing in my life without my grandmother's prayers around me. I can't do nothing.
Before we go ahead, before we keep going forward, I want to go back a little bit because something caught my ear. Why did you feel you had to sell drugs in 5th or 6th grade? Was it because you needed money that badly? Was it a family member that pushed you into it? What happened there?
It's a lot. It's a lot of it, right? It's when you're young, like the only thing that you want is, some things. Like, you're around, like, just because you're in a bad neighborhood, it doesn't stop a kid down the street from having Jordans. It doesn't stop another kid from being able to get a bike or a Christmas gift. Like, when I was a kid, the most I would get for Christmas, I got $10 for Christmas one time. That was the most I ever had, like a $10 bill, literally.
Wow.
That was the most I ever had. And I got like these small toys that like somebody else had. They weren't in a wrapper. They were just given to me that were already open. Right. So when you come up in that type of I won't call it extreme poverty, but it's poverty for America. Because when you start to go in other parts of the world, like India, Africa, different places, it's extreme poverty, right? But when you're in those situations, poverty, you get kind of jealous down the street. So you're like, man, because all these people have things and you don't. So you want to make some money. And so part of it is you and part of it is the influence, because you're malleable at that age. You're very pliable. And someone older than you that can use you as a pawn because you don't have a record. And they won't arrest you and charge you with the same crime because you're a juvenile, right? It may be a smack on the wrist for you. So we're right at the age when you're young in order to do some of these heinous acts because you won't get penalized the same as an adult would. So you're like the perfect person when you're that age.
Were you well versed on the laws then when you were 5th or 6th grade?
No, not at that age. It was people around me, but I don't blame them because I don't blame them. Some people in my family, some people in my neighborhood, I don't blame them. They didn't have it. It was a repeat cycle for them. This is something that their parents did. This is something that their aunts did. This is something, the reason I say that is because when I went to college, I saw a shift in my family. When I met God, I saw a shift in my family. My cousins that were on the corner selling drugs began to call me and say, Jason, I don't want to do this anymore. Can you help me change? So I was able to get one of my cousins at CDL, help him get a CDL license. Now he drives trucks. One of them wanted to become a chef. I helped him go to school, become a chef. Now he does that. Like, they didn't want to be in that environment. It's something that you forced to do. Once you get that record, it's hard to get a job. And so they end up going down the same path because nobody will hire them. But I was able to be in a financial situation to be able to help them get a CDL or help them go to school to get a culinary arts degree, right? In order to change their environment. So I began to see change based on the choices that they had in their mind.
Were you carrying a gun in 5th or 6th grade?
Holding them, carrying them, going to get them, like my family members, that type of thing. It happens. Yeah.
What kind of drugs were you selling?
Crack cocaine.
Yeah. Wow. Were you also using or just selling?
No. I wouldn't. I would see that wasn't in my it wasn't in my warehouse. I was the worst drug dealer in the history of drug dealers, Gunner.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I was the worst. My the people around me, They would give me something. I would hold that thing for a month. They were the same guys that were selling it a day. They were like, dude, you suck. I'm like, dude, that ain't in me.
Well, when you're dealing in drugs like that, the people that give you the drugs want that product sold ASAP so they can
Yeah,
get
turned it
that.
around. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
was there ever any pressure put upon you, like
Oh,
death threats?
there was, but I was like the people that were near to me. A lot of my family members were high-ranking gang members, so they weren't going to do anything to me. Anybody that had pressure, because they were high-ranking gang members.
Did you ever shoot at anybody?
Oh yeah, it's unnecessary. Unfortunately, I don't want to talk about all that, but it happens here in that environment. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! And you had family members that were high-ranking gang members, but were you ever forced to be in a gang?
For it necessarily like the force is something that you kind of grow up into. You get initiated, that type. It wasn't like I said, you want a better life for yourself.
Right.
And in that moment in time, that's all you see, right? Because you're kind of brainwashed into what you see. So it wasn't necessarily a force by them, but I wanted things. I wanted something that I wanted a bike. I wanted a PlayStation. It wasn't a PlayStation, it was a Nintendo. But I wanted a Nintendo. I wanted a pair of Jordans or something to eat. So I want to be able to go to, Harold's Chicken or wherever it was in Chicago. I want to be able to do those things. And that was like one of the methodologies in order to do it.
Were you ever directly shot at?
Oh, yes, that happens in the game.
As I've gotten to know you through the years, I remember you telling me stories where you watched family members and friends die.
Mm-hmm.
When you see something like that, and what age were you at that? Like fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade?
Yeah, a lot of yeah.
Tell me what's going through your mind when one day these are your boys over here with family member, close friend. All of a sudden, you're watching life slowly, evaporate. What's going through your mind then?
At that age, like when you're at that age, and it's kind of crazy when you look back on it, you don't internalize it. As I've gotten older, I'm looking at it like, oh, I live, a difficult and a traumatic life. But when you're young and you go to funerals, you go to, people's house after they've been, put in wheelchairs for the rest of their life. It's something that happens and you're taught to be tough and so you just hold all of that stuff in. And going through my mind, I don't look back into it, just the fear. Other than the fear and the trauma, I don't look back over and say, oh, I remember this situation. I just remember it being a part of what I saw growing up.
What was the most frightening experience you ever went through individually?
I would say I remember coming to the house one day and there's like bullet holes where my grandmother sits. Right. So, and my family outside, and somebody just had a drive-by, and our house was usually the target of drive-bys. And I remember bullet holes where my grandmother like had she was a plant lady and she loved like gardening. She had tomatoes and, squash and all that stuff in the back. And she had plants right in the living room. And in Chicago, in the bungalow in Chicago, there was always this big portrait window. Mm-hmm. And it was two windows to the left, or one window to the left, one window to the right. On that window to the right, if you're looking in, or the left from the inside, she sits in a chair right there watching what goes on outside of the house. And that was her spot. So when I came back and I saw all my family members outside, and then those bullet holes where she sits, that was probably the most devastated and the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through, because that there, thinking my grandmother was lost and was killed, that right there had to be the most traumatic thing I've ever experienced. And because um she's been the motivating factor to all of the things that I've done.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to live that life anymore, and the only way I could is to think differently. And it was her saying, "You are different. You don't have to be this. You can overcome this. I know what you guys are doing. I need you to realize that you're not like everybody else." And she was a saving grace to me on so many levels. So to think about that at that age, I used to cry myself to sleep at night thinking that we were going to harm her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why did your grandma allow so many people to live in her house if she knew what was going on?
Well, what else? Where else can these people go? That was my grandma. My grandmother was a deeply religious woman. She felt like her prayers and her life would be able to transform people. And a lot of people it did. Some it did later on in life. And she felt like that people had nowhere else to go. Where if she did them, if she kicked them out, they were good as well going to the streets forever. So she felt like they needed to see some positive influence in their life, and it changed a bunch of people way more than that were lost.
As much as your house was shot up as a kid, did your grandmother ever get shot?
No, my grandmother was had a spear around her the whole time. My grandmother was that lady that everybody respected for the most part. Even in she can walk anywhere, she can do anything. Most parents couldn't. Like you couldn't walk. We couldn't walk 2 blocks away. Those are things that you couldn't do in your neighborhood because Gangster Disciples on this block, Vice Lords are on this block. The BDs, the Black Disciples are on this block, the Blackstones are on this block, the Latin Kings are on 95th Street, right? So there are certain things that you had to know where you were going. But my grandmother could go anywhere she wanted.
Wow. I understand that there was times in your school year life where you would go to school like drunk. Is that
Um, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's not that's not something that you like. This lifestyle is all a part of it. It's not like just one thing. Like there is times where because of the things that you see, because of the things that you experience, because of the people you hang around, yeah, like a lot of like my what's so funny is that as I got to the NFL, everyone knew me as religious Jason, right? The guy
Yep.
that's going to tell you about God, tell you about Jesus, that type of thing. And everybody would come to me with their stuff. They're like, dude, how are you this disciplined at 23, 24 years old? And it was based on the things that I saw because my child was kind of taken away from me at that age because I had to think in a way that I had to survive. I didn't have time to just play around and do what everybody else did. I had to think about certain things. So, and a part of the game was drinking, it was smoking, it was a lot of these things I did young. And God blessed me with the ability to not want to do those things naturally, way before, I entered high school. It was something that was done apart. I was done away with.
Was there a definitive moment when you got in high school and found out you're this exceptional athlete when your life started to change?
I would always say that I was, my family members, two of my older cousins. One's name's Jermaine. Jermaine was my aunt's son that helped raise me with my grandmother. And I remember one day, my freshman year, going to high school, and Jermaine's like, "You don't play sports?" And I told him yeah. I was like, "I'm gonna play basketball." He's like, "You think you'll make the team?" I was like, "No." I was like, "I know I'm gonna make the team. What do you think I'm gonna make the team? What are you talking about?" He was like, "Dude, I hope you don't make it since you all arrogant about it, right?" And I just always use that moment because I always thought that. So though I was in an environment that kind of had negative thoughts because of my grandmother, constantly hearing that, man, you're different, constantly hearing that you're special, constantly hearing that you're going to go to college, constantly hearing that you're going to be the exception, I begin to think that.
Wow.
And that was the difference, is because she brainwashed me into thinking that I was different from everybody else.
Wow. Now, as good as
And,
you,
over the years, you begin to think, like, you begin to think it through. Like, no, like, I literally, I Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen were our life as kids, right? Scottie Pippen had someone in his family. I don't remember who it was that lived on the other block from me as a kid, and he would come over every now and again and be in the backyard, maybe every other year or whatever. And all the kids from the neighborhood would go to the backyard and just wait in line and hopefully he signs an autograph. And they would be like, "Jay, you gonna get your shoes signed or your shirt signed?" I'm like, "No." They were like, "No, why? It's Scottie Pippen." I was like, one day y'all gonna be asking me for my stuff, right?
wow.
That was just the way that I thought because of my grandmother.
Now, at what point in high school, as good as you were in basketball, I would imagine at some point in high school, there was this inner struggle between basketball and football. At what point did football start winning out over basketball?
Oh, okay. So basketball is still my favorite sport.
Right.
And most people don't know that, right? That's the sport that I love the most. Um, so getting me away from basketball was a task and a half. It was a task and a half, right? So I was really good at basketball. I was a Division I level player in basketball. I had scholarship offers for basketball.
You were that good?
Yeah, I was really good at basketball.
What
Um,
what what colleges offered you scholarships in basketball?
like TCU, UTEP, mid-major schools. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And this wasn't the same TCU Big 12. This was way pre-Big 12 times. But it was basically mid-major schools around me, Illinois State, that type of thing. It was mid-major schools. I did have letters and stuff from UCLA and big schools. I did. They needed my senior year because I was a point guard.
Okay.
Point guard is like playing quarterback. You only get one of those a year. You only get one of those scholarships a year. And so I begin to see all the work that I put in basketball all the time. Left hand shot, crossover, living. Like, it was a point in my life where I lived at the playground, lived there. I would tell my aunt, "Hey, listen, I'm not coming home to midnight. I'm not in the street. I'm just at the playground. You know what it's like when I was in the street, but
Right.
I'm at the playground now. You know where I am. I'm on 111, right across from the police station. We'll be there until midnight." Right. And I'm talking about, we start there in the morning, like at 9 a.m. to midnight. We do this all summer long. In basketball, you put all of that effort in, and I began to realize that, man, there is a million dudes that are my body comp.
Mm-hmm.
And my football coach, which was also my basketball coach, Coach Willie Simp, he said to me, "Jason, listen, the numbers are just better in football. They got 82 scholarships. Basketball has 12. They're only going to give out 4 a year, three a year. So your chance of making it is so much higher because they're going to give out 20 plus scholarships a year in football." And I didn't believe him. But my senior year, playing football, I tore my ACL.
Mm.
Tore my ACL. All of my basketball scholarships.
Really?
Football, on the other hand, I didn't even play my senior year, but 4 games, 3.5. I hurt that fourth game. I had like 900 yards in that
Yeah,
time, and I had 12
900
touchdowns.
yards in 4 games.
Yeah, it was nuts. High school for me was nuts. Anybody that make it to the NFL, the high school stuff is ridiculous, right? So I didn't get a chance to play basketball that year, but my basketball scholarship just going away. Football is like, this is just an ACL. Ohio State offered me after my scholarship. Miami offered me, I mean, not after my scholarship, after my injury. Miami offered me after my, like, there was like, they just kept coming in. There's like, oh, ACL, that's nothing. We'll get you back. We're going to send you. They were sending me information on physicians in my area. And I was like, oh, this is different. This is different. And at that moment, I realized that that football was going to be the main thing because basketball kind of was dissolving and football was like moving forward. The way the University of Michigan got me was they said, you know what? If you establish yourself in football, we'll let you play basketball. That was a lie.
So you pick Michigan over Miami, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and you get there as a freshman. I mean, you go through all these trials and tribulations as a kid, instability at home. You went from Chicago to Decatur, Illinois at one point, then back to Chicago. And you get to this big university with all these rich kids and stuff like that. And did you feel like you were an outsider initially when you got to Michigan?
So there is definitely a culture shock, right? Because Chicago and the Midwest in general is very, very segregated, right?
Yes.
There's Black people in this area in Chicago. There's Mexicans in this area. There's Puerto Ricans in this area. There's whites in this area. That's how Chicago has been historically. So being in an all Black community, I was fortunate enough because when like you said, part of my story kind of left out because it's so vast, right? Everyone's that's lived on this earth, any amount of time, 30, 40 years, you got like a lot of intricate parts of your story. My dad would get out of prison and move me to a small town, Decatur, Illinois.
Yeah.
Danville, I live in Bloomington, Illinois, like these small towns.
Oh my goodness.
And
wow.
Yeah. So these small towns, like because he didn't want me being in Chicago, because he understood the life of Chicago, my family, where they were raised, Robert Taylor Home Projects, Outgale Gardens, 9-0, like the environments that we were in were very, very like volatile and dangerous. So he wanted to move to these small towns. And these small towns, it was Black people, white people, there was a mix.
Yeah.
Right. So me going back and forth, starting my I went first and second grade, but consistently starting like in fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, I would go back and forth with him all the time. Back and forth. The reason I would go back and forth is because he would always get back incarcerated by Christmas time, right? Always, I would come back to Chicago.
Oh my goodness.
And I found out later in my life is that one of the reasons that he always got incarcerated near that time is because he was very, very embarrassed that he couldn't do much for Christmas. Which is a whole story in and of itself. But being in those environments taught me a little bit about culture. So when I got to University of Michigan, yes, it was a culture shock, but I was more prepared than most people that were coming from my situation because I did have moments in time where I was around all races. But yes, it was definitely a culture shock. You can leave your dorm room unlocked, your car unlocked. You can do all those things, which was heaven for me. And then it was encouraged to be smart. I didn't realize how smart I was until I got to University of Michigan, because I began to see people get rewarded for their academic success. And I was like, oh, football players that finish with over a 3.0 get this amount of accolades and rewards and this amount of, notoriety for it. I was like, okay, I can do that. And I did it. And I ended up, throughout my college career being, academic All-American every year, right? And my grades were worse in high school than it was at the University of Michigan, which is mind-blowing, right?
How did you get in Michigan if you had poor high school grades?
So I had to, like, as long as your ACT is above the standard, that's how you can get in. Like, I wasn't failing in high school, but I was like a 2.7 student, didn't try much. but I was able to pass the ACT, and that's all I needed. When I got to college, I went up to like a 3.4 or 3.5 student.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and when I got to University of Michigan. So yeah.
Hey everybody, Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and a brand new cash out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First two legs of your parlay hit, cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at an even bigger payday. Now, who can pass up something like that? Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odds boost, same game parlays, and a huge prize pool contest. Now, right now, MyBookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw real quick. Use promo code GUNN, that's GUNN, on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code GUNN, GUNN, to claim your own cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. You go from a home as a youth with a grandmother praying over you to now you're a freshman at a prominent university like Michigan, and you're rooming with a young man who's a son of a pastor who's praying over you. At what stage did you start to really feel a change in Jason Avant?
I would say, first of all, when I got to college, me being a Southside kid and me being very, very charismatic, I had guys always blessed me with that ability and that gift.
Yep.
I was able to get him to do a lot of bad stuff.
What?
When I first got to college, I was able to get him to do the craziest stuff. He would go places with me, different stuff. I was like, dude, I'm a bad influence on you at this time. So later in that year, we went through our freshman year. I played as a freshman. He didn't. We went to spring ball. Spring ball is very, very important for you in college. Like how you perform during the spring, going into that football season was very, very important. First or second day of spring ball, he breaks his ankle.
Oh,
and he blames it on me. He says, Jason, I've been hanging out at the strip club with you. I've been going over here, been doing this, been doing that. And I broke my ankle because I haven't been following God. You need to come to church with me because I've been going to all these crazy places with you. And that's how it started. I started to go to church with him. We used to travel 45 minutes to 45 minutes to Detroit to go to church on Sundays. And then we would come back to practice, come practice by 3 or 4 in order to hit our weight room and do practice film session late on Sunday. And over that period of time, God began to just show himself to me. And I remember May 4th, 2003, we're going to church, from that February to that May 4th, 2003. God began to replay all the stuff that it took for me to get to that moment. Excuse me. He began to show me all the times my house was shut up. He began to show me all the doors he had to open in order for me to get in that spot. He began to show me all the hardships. I used to have conversations with God, like, Lord, why does my dad have to be strung out on drugs? And why did my mom leave me? He began to go through all of these things, just flooded my memory of all the stuff that it took. My coach basically bribing me in order to play football, how I got to that moment. And May 4th, 2003, after all I've done for you, Jason, I can feel the Holy Spirit saying, you can't live your life for me. I've been good to you this time. And that's where my journey with Christ happened, May 4th, 2003. And been the best decision that I've made personally in my life. And I promised God during my time in NFL that I was representing, that my purpose would be more than just scoring touchdowns. I had multiple opportunities to go to the other teams, that I was going to make more money and I'll have more of a role in the offense.
Sure.
But my goal was to tell people about Christ. That was my number one goal.
Hmm.
More than the NFL and all it had to offer. And that was my purpose, because I wanted to let people know about the good news that's personally happened for me.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Most of the people that makes it in the NFL, it's the
Yeah.
same environment. It's not much different. It's not much different. I've literally had to talk NFL teammates out of not selling drugs anymore. Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Those types of things happen. And don't be prying me to try to figure out who it is. But what I'm saying is
I might even know. So
yeah, but those types of things happen for a purpose and a reason, because I was able to, and they could connect with me. Even though they look at me like, yo, I like, you don't seem like what you've been through. I need to find out why. When I tell them my story, it's like, oh, we grew up the same way.
was it
Because most of the guys that make the NFL come from my environment.
was there ever a point when you were at Michigan where you, as you were making the spiritual transformation, where you stopped and said, if it wasn't for my grandmother, I would have been dead. I wouldn't even be here right now.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Even to this day, Gunner, like I could be driving.
Yeah.
I'll pull over because I'll start crying, because it don't supposed to be like this.
Mm.
You know, I'm fortunate. God's been merciful, and I recognize that. It's only because of His mercy that I wasn't consumed. And yeah, and He puts people in your life, like Kathleen Duda. That was another moment in my life where He sent an angel to get me to University of Michigan camp, and all the scholarships started to just flutter in at that time. Like there's like being in a room with the pastor's son. Those are other moments. Like it just happened because of someone was able to take their time. And that's the thing that I'll say, that one of the most inspiring things about my story is a story for everyone, because you never know when you're the person that God needs to use in order to advance and help someone's life. You just don't know when it'll occur and when it'll happen. You have to be open and willing. Like you said, why did my grandmother, help all those people? One of them was able to help change the trajectory of a family. And if she had the mind of, I ain't helping these heathens, that wouldn't have happened and been able to transform. The cousins that are behind us, they work and go to college, are different. Drug dealers' kids are in college. The mindset just changed. And that was because that woman was able to. Kathleen Duda could have just been like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to the South Side of Chicago and harming my family, messing around here. I'm the only white person within 5 miles of the South Side of Chicago. Like she explained the story. Like when I got off on 119th, I've never been more scared in my life. That's what the
Wow.
I've never been more scared in my life driving down 119 to get to your house. That woman sacrifice. And what I'm saying is that you never know, one of those sacrifices can change a generation for people.
Okay, so you have this praying grandmother, you have coaches, you have this woman who just decides to get you to this camp. You have a roommate in college. Even at this stage of your life, and you think about everything that you endured as a kid, everything that you saw, all the people around you that didn't make it, do you still at this stage of your life ask yourself, why me? Why was I the one chosen?
You know what? I won't ever understand completely why, but you begin to see later on that for some reason I've always had one of the biggest impacts when it comes to family and people around me. And I just think that God puts that in you, that he knows that some people just won't shut up. Some people are just gonna tell people about me. And maybe he, designed it that way. Will I ever understand completely? Not till I get to heaven, but I'm definitely fortunate, and I don't take it for granted. I really don't take it for granted at all.
Were you ever able to repair your relationship with your mom and dad?
Yep. So my mom, both have passed since my dad passed in 2011, but I moved my dad with me when he got out in 2007. He stayed. He was with me. He just had moved out. But yeah, me and his relationship was really good. I just wish that I was able to spend more time with him. But as you become a father, and as life gets very, very tumultuous, I begin to understand some things some decisions that he made a little bit better. My mom died 3 years ago now. Definitely repaired their relationship when I was a freshman in college or so. And me and her had a good relationship. It wasn't the same relationship as a mom that was there the entire time, but we had a very good relationship. And yeah, and both of them, found God, and their lives were way different. My dad was able at later on in life to hold down jobs, keep jobs, that type of thing.
Yeah.
He's very, very skilled, very, very skilled. My mom, worked for McCormick Place, which is like the convention center for 35 years. Yeah.
Now, from the time that I first met you as a rookie, even up to today, and we've had a great relationship, the only Jason Avant I know is a guy who's always smiling, always positive. Was there ever a point where that was just a facade initially and it grew into something more? Or once you got to the NFL, were you always consistently that guy?
I think that I was that guy, but it was because of the information that I was constantly putting myself around.
Okay.
So I don't think that it's possible in and of anyone's self in order to be cheerful all the time, right? Always happy all the time, because life is ups and downs, and that's not normal.
Right.
So, but what you don't know is that I was up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. Every time that you saw me, 5 o'clock, I would get up. I would get to church at 6 o'clock. I would pray from 6 to 7, and then do a small Bible study until 7:30, so I can meet my 8:15 meeting at the stadium. I did that every morning, and I was constantly bombarding myself with what God said about me, constantly bombarding myself with praise. And so it was an environment that I created for myself, which helped me deal with the temptation that comes along with the NFL, that helped me be able to not internalize why I wasn't getting the ball and I was always open. Like, I needed that in order to be able to be the best teammate I could, in order to be the best person I could, in order to keep a smile on my face. And it was genuine because it was something that was on my mind all the time, something that was like nurtured all the time. If I stay away from God for a long period of time, you may see me spaz out. It just happens. It's human nature. You have emotions, but in order to control those emotions, I just created an environment in order to put myself in.
I know for a fact, as a player, and even after your life after football, you went into some bad areas to speak to kids. What was your constant message to kids who were going through a lot of the same things that you went through?
That you have to, like what I just said, the environment. I think that you can change your environment without leaving your environment, because your environment starts right here. And that's the environment that I think that people need to see that has to change, is that if your mind changes about a situation, though you haven't physically left the environment, you're going to be successful if you allow your mind to change. And when I was saying, my grandmother speaking all those positive sayings over me, those positive affirmations, even though I was in an environment, I was doing the same thing that was in the environment. But there came a point where I began to realize, oh, no, I'm different, because this here began to take root. And that's what I talk to them about, is that you don't have to be what your environment says. If you get a vision, if you get a dream, and you constantly speak it into existence. I always tell kids to speak what you hope, not what you feel. Speak what you hope happens. Don't speak what you feel. And I believe that's a part of it. And also, every football coach gives you a few nuggets, before you go on the field, or even like mission statements. One of the mission statements that every football coach has in some form or another, they may word it differently, but it's always this outside forces and inside forces.
Right.
Inside is what the team requires of you, what's in the best interest of the group, and how you have to protect that at all costs. The outside forces is what the media expects of you, what this person expects of you, and you have to safeguard what the inside force is saying over the outside force. And that right there is a message that will be timeless, because everyone wants you to be the one on ESPN, the one that's on Essence Magazine, like Jalen Hurts, that everybody wants you to have that person. But there's a dude on the Eagles right now that's battling with his family and his identity because he's not that person.
Yeah.
And it's torture, because you want the money, you want the success, you want the notoriety, you want all that comes with it. But there has to be a realization of your role and the role of the team, and you getting the vision for yourself, and not allowing outside people to change that. That's the most important part.
What an incredible message. I mean, you go from successful high school athlete, successful college athlete, successful professional athlete, and now in life after football, you are a successful businessman as well. A few years ago, you launched Trampoline, in New Jersey. How's that been going? Because I know you also had one in Delaware.
Yeah. So the pandemic hurt me with 2 stores, but God has blessed me to be open in Deptford, New Jersey. That's the flagship store. And it's been going since 2017, and that's very, very long in this industry. And so it's going really well. We're in the process of updating the park. We do, birthday parties, corporate events, laser tag, arcades, cafe, Ninja Warrior, rock climbing. We've added 3 new attractions thus far, and we're in the process of renovating the entire park. So yeah, it's been going great. And the reason I opened up the park is because it was a break from reality. One of the best things that happened to me when I was a kid, Gunner, one of my aunts, my Aunt Barbara, she would be like a seasonal employee at Six Flags. And one of her perks were she would get a few tickets. And we would rotate on who goes and who didn't. And I remember going to Six Flags and not thinking about no South Side issues, no gang banging, no nothing. And it kind of, helped me to dream. And so I wanted to open up something in the community that will give a space for kids not to worry about being bullied on the internet, not worrying about what clothes they have, not worrying about if they're, pretty enough, smart enough, if they're, whatever. They can just have a break from reality. And that's what Launch Trampoline Park has been for a lot of people. We're at the stage now where people have graduated college that work for me. And, and seeing some of those kids come back, some lawyers come back, some engineers come back. It's a great thing, man.
That's awesome, dude. I mean, like I said, I've known you for a long time, and it falls under the category of when you think you know somebody, you really don't know. And
Mm.
what an incredible journey and testimony that you've had, and you're still here today smiling, man. And I know I've taken up a lot of your time, but I can't thank you enough for giving me such an insightful look into who Jason Avant really is on this edition of Gun on One, man. Thank you so much, man.
No problem, Gunner. Be blessed.
You do the same, man.
Hey,
All
go
right.
Birds.
All
Go
right.
Birds.
There you go. All right. That's a wrap up this edition of Gun on One here on Inside the Birds Network. For Jason Avant, who, if there's anybody out there who feels that you have no hope, just listen to his story to let you know that you always have hope. For Jason Avant, I'm Derrick Gunn. We'll see you next time.